James is having spaghetti squash with quinoa, cabbage, carrots, onions, and sesame ginger sauce. And I'm going to talk about CSI Vegas.
The final
season.
Man, I thought it would last forever.
And James you can see he's going to talk about Ezra Pound again.
Individual.
He says he's going to be talking about him for a while.
Oh yeah, get ready, folks.
So,
especially if you believe in free verse and poets having poetic license and stuff like that, you have responsibilities. You can't go out propagandizing for fascists and Nazis.
Okay.
It's just and again, you can do it, but in wartime, that's treason. If you're using the facilities of the Nazis and fascists themselves, you can say whatever you want if you're back here.
So CSI Vegas, I don't know if this is the same as CSI Las Vegas or whatever, but it has Catherine.
She's the boss now.
She's a boss lady of sorts.
But Grissom is gone.
But
right?
yeah, she's the only one on there who was one of the.
Original.
And so the thing is this. I opened it up and I'm like, what? There's only 2 discs in here.
Yeah, only about half a season maybe or something.
Well, this is the final season. I think that's what happened. I think they cut it halfway through. They were like, nope, this is gotta end. Because
when things like that happen, it's either people quitting or more likely they're just not making enough money.
It was just that bad. There's the stories weren't well planned out. You're sitting there going, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And the characters, they're really two-dimensional. I mean, the only person you have there is Catherine, and honestly, I think there comes to be a point when maybe when women get wow, he likes cabbage. When women get a little bit older, and maybe they shouldn't be really skeletal thin. Right?
She always was too thin.
She always was too thin, and now she's kind of looking like the Tales from the Crypt ghoul.
I just glanced in. She looked okay, but too thin, right?
From a distance,
she's had some pretty good plastic surgery.
With the close-ups.
Yeah. Well, why would they do close-ups? Why don't they do what they used to do in Hollywood? Like they put some sort of a silk scarf.
Yeah. Just like Vaseline. The
yeah, maybe it's Vaseline.
Yeah.
I don't know what.
So anyway, no. I honestly, I never liked Catherine's character, but I felt sorry for the actress.
I think she did a reasonably good job.
I think she did a
good job projecting a particular type of character.
Yeah.
But I get the impression, kind of, sort of, that that role is not much of a stretch.
yeah.
I don't know. Maybe she's just a wonderful grandma or great-grandma. Yeah.
Honestly, she was the most interesting character of these characters, which is
not saying
much. I mean, these characters, like when you looked at the original, you had Grissom and you had Sarah Seidel, and they had this, backstory, right? They had dynamic together, right? And they had and then, I mean, all of the characters had something. You had the one guy who was addicted to gambling, right?
Yeah, the black fellow. I thought that they were really risky there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Not that it should have been. I mean, there are lots of black people who have trouble, or African Americans, and Caribbean Americans and Africans.
Well, there'd be a lot of people who have trouble with gambling, no matter what race they
so
are.
It's just like
the fact
play.
Yeah.
But too often nowadays in the media, and particularly in the field of the so-called arts, it's just, can't touch it. The bad guys, for example, are whites or South African whites, stuff like that. Irish people, they love making bad people out of Irish people. And bad people are capitalists and all this sort of stuff. Warren Buffett ain't that bad of a guy, folks. He actually supports the Democratic Party, apparently.
All right. Well, anyway, yeah, this final season was dreadful. I don't know what really put the final nail in the coffin for this, because there were just so many things you could look at that didn't work with this season. It's honestly, it's good that they ended it. And I feel bad that they ended it. I feel like, man, the people who made this series end really should be ashamed of themselves, because it was such a strong series.
Well,
and
I
to
am
take
telling
it down
you,
this far.
right, like I said, I think they pulled the plug because of money, and they're paying for it.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't really feel sorry for them, or
Yeah.
you know, if you these things cost a fortune. They're not like movies, but still, they cost a fortune to put out. If you've got a product that sold, you don't mess around with it. I think what they did was like we can hire a bunch of, I don't know, people that they found in a Rexall drugstore or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and we can pay them
Exactly.
cheap
I was
and
looking
make a
at these
huge amount
people
of
going,
coin.
okay, so you can't model for Sears anymore because it went bust. So
I guess
doing
it did in
this,
the
whatever.
United States,
I don't know.
I thought it just closed down here in
maybe
Canada.
it did.
And
I'm
they
not sure.
were kind of, sometimes businesses have to do that.
Sure.
Look not just at their core competencies, but core clientele and stuff like that. And maybe it didn't do, people here in Canada are kind of loyal to Hudson's Bay. I thought they were loyal to Eaton's too, but not enough. Hudson's Bay, I think, is still going. But it's been around since 1683 or something like that.
That's amazing. I didn't know it was still going.
I think it's still.
Really?
Hmm?
I thought they closed that down. What do I know?
Maybe. Yeah.
Oh, they closed down Eaton, I think.
Eaton's has been closed for quite a long
yeah.
time, which is kind of weird because they had this huge, big, kind of like part of a mall thing, a huge Eaton's complex.
I remember that here.
In Toronto.
And wasn't that Eaton's here in that mall? Anyway.
No.
You don't care. What was that?
Hudson. Well, originally
Was
it was something, and then Hudson's Bay took it over.
Huh.
But that was,
but it's not there now either.
well, Hudson's Bay took it over. I think it's still there.
You think it's there?
I think it is. The big mall here.
Shows how much
The
I go
big
shopping.
mall, you're talking about the one downtown, not the
yeah.
park place.
Yeah.
But there was some big, that was Sears that was up there in the park
Oh
place.
yes, that one's gone.
Closed now.
Yeah, which is too bad because I've talked to other people about it, and we all miss Kenmore. Good appliances. Yes.
Was that a Sears
It was.
kind of like
Yeah.
brand or something? Well, how often do you say that about appliances? And
Oh, they're
stuff
great.
like that?
So you have 21 minutes to talk about
Ezra Pound.
again.
It's going to take
Enjoy.
21 months or something like that. Okay, folks. So I'm going to recite some stuff because it's important to realize what's in this stuff. Eventually I'll get hold of the cantos and I'll be going through them all.
You're going to recite some stuff?
I'm going to read
You're
it.
going to read it. All right, so I will sit here because apparently James has left the camera.
Well,
And
I gotta find my glasses.
Nobody's
Oh,
supposed to
man.
ever do that.
Well,
Not that we're really
We do
exciting to
whatever.
look at.
you know, like it's.
We could have, I could put
left them in the car.
Elvis up here to dance for you.
Yeah,
Well,
left
see,
them
you're
in
not
the
gonna
car.
do that
so,
then.
You do whatever, you know, like.
So you're just going to talk about some more stuff from here then?
Yeah, exactly.
Good.
Maybe I'll be able to read it in this. It's not quite like reading outside during the daytime. Okay, so Ezra Pound. These guys are hoping for some food when I said okay. Yeah. So, Ezra Pound had a bright. He had weird economic theories, weird socio-political theories. And they, like he seemed to think somehow or another he was a prophet or something like that, but they weren't original to him. Isn't that weird? Strutting around. Someone once said that phrase could best characterize Americans, typical American, is breezy self-confidence. And I mean, there are too many Americans, I'm not saying every one of them, but too many of them could be best characterized by blustery overconfidence. Get the difference? And this guy is the poster puke for that sort of blustery overconfidence. So when I say blustery, I don't mean to suggest windy, but also blustery. And maybe blustering has that connotation anyway. Maybe it means that originally. I have to check. But so he kind of like appropriated, I wouldn't say stolen, the idea of major ideas of Major Douglas. In this book he's called Captain Douglas, an English so-called theorist. And sorry for supporting my head here, my back's bothering me a little bit. It's not as though I'm that bored with Ezra Pound. I kind of am bored by him, but hopefully I don't pass that on too much to you folks. Or maybe I should, like I don't want you to be excited about this guy. Wow, one of the greatest, the greatest American poet of his time, according to this guy. And, American poetry wasn't actually that good during the 20th century, but there's no way when William Carlos Williams, was he better than Ezra Pound? Yeah, he was. He wasn't as blustery. But that's faint praise, say it's better than Ezra Pound, because neither of them really wrote poetry. Sometimes Ezra Pound would give it a shake. I don't know if William Carlos Williams ever bothered. All he did was write little snippets of prose, short. I call it like short stories or something like that. Short fiction or whatever. Like it's something. His stuff you could find in kind of like a middle-brow novel or something like that. Something you could find it in. Maybe it doesn't even have the verve of, let's say, Jack Kerouac's. I think it's supposed to be prose, like On the Road. I actually got through a couple of Jack Kerouac. Are they supposed to be novels or are they supposed to be travelogues? I'm not sure. But at any rate, it's been a long time. I understand it was 50 years ago. I think it was largely when I was around 20. I did a lot of reading in the summer of 1974. So 50 years ago, because I turned 70 this year. And the other big idea that, like, I don't think really this idiot invented like free verse. And imagism is just kind of like something that's, I think, an extension of a haiku, short little pieces that have an image and maybe a thing that is suggested by the image or something like that. And I think that's kind of like maybe what you've got in haiku. Then there's his Ezra Pound's socio-political philosophy, which is based on Confucius. Talk about being cutting edge. A lot of people going around, I think still not, oh man, this guy was really cutting. No, he wasn't. He was a kind of like a medievalist. I was wondering where Yeats got some of his ideas. Got too many of them from Ezra Pound. He used to practice fencing, and Yeats did, but that was at the instigation, I think, of Ezra Pound. I think Ezra Pound thought of himself as something like a fencer. I wish he'd kind of run across. I almost wish. I wouldn't really wish death on someone, but I wish he could have got like a bad scar or something like that from a better fencer than him. I doubt if he was very good. This guy doesn't even boast about his prowess at fencing. He's boasting about Pound's prowess at this, that, and the other thing. So I don't know if he got much of a chance to really practice his art. You know what I'm saying? I think he did some exercising. But if he was as good at fencing as he was at writing so-called poetry, it would have been funny. So, because he's a thoroughgoing incompetent. He's the kind of guy who writes pretentious cowboy poetry without the rhythm, the regularized rhythm, and without the regularized rhyme. And he born out in Idaho and stuff like that. You folks out in Idaho, there are some nice people, I'm sure, in Idaho. Boise State, was that the name of that football team that won the best bowl game I've ever seen? It was like David taking out Goliath, because the team they were playing had a real prospect for the NFL. He actually did pretty well in the NFL. What was his name? Peterson or something like that? Adrian something or other. I kind of forgot. But he didn't have the greatest game. Boise State handled it. You could see that the big state university team that they were playing against had way more bench, way more talent, but they didn't have the gray matter that Ezra Pound didn't have. So they pulled off special plays and trick plays, all that sort of stuff, executed to perfection. It was stunning. I was watching it with my dad. My dad kind of watched it a little bit, and he hated sports. I was visiting my dad around the holiday time, around this time of year, a little bit later, between Christmas and New Year's. Good memories, unlike the memories of reading. And I actually have gone through all of Ezra Pound's canto. So my friend, I was mentioning it, pretty a sharp individual, he was saying a long time back, maybe a generation ago, I'm starting the cantos at the end. I mentioned this before, but it bears repeating. I said, how come you're doing that? It seemed a little, bass backwards or something like that. And he said, yeah, I'm going to be the first person who actually read the canto, to read the end of the cantos. Of course, he was implying that he wasn't going to make it, like pretty well anyone who starts the canto, make it all the way through. But I made it through. I've got, my patience isn't infinite, but I've got a large reservoir of patience for fools and idiots. And that's how I almost ended up dying with bone marrow cancer, because the doctors, there were 11 all told, but 10 of them, and this is spaced over the course of 8 years, 10 and a half months, they literally refused, didn't deign to diagnose my cancer. Couldn't be bothered, never mind that, they'd been fleecing me and my family and loved ones and friends and, well, the Canadian populace of tax monies to pay their handsome wages. Handsome like Elvis Presley back in the day. Someone once said, oh, he's as handsome as 10 movie stars. So that's kind of like the wages that they were getting. Handsome as 10 movie stars. These doctors that refused to diagnose my bone marrow cancer. But, I'm so patient. I should have just gone to tell them. Now, I have, with emergency folks, every so occasionally, I've gone to town on them. In the wake of them not diagnosing my stroke about 4.5 years ago, that was a shameful episode in the annals of medical history. Because I diagnosed before I went down. Fact is, it took me 5 seconds to diagnose it, tentatively, of course, as a stroke. I lost some of my field of vision. And I was going, wow, why would it be both eyes lost the field of vision, but where are the eyes connected? Oh, in the brain. So I've got a problem with the brain. What's most likely? A stroke. I figured it out. 5 seconds. 1 1,000, 2 1,000, half of 3 1,000. And each one of my thousands goes 2 seconds. Yeah. So 5 seconds all told. I used to think that one of those 1 1,000 was a full second. 2 seconds. Anyway, Confucius. Now, Confucius is put forth as a great thinker and model for devising a civilization. Oh, okay, by the time Ezra Pound had come around, Confucianism had shown, vis-a-vis other belief systems, just how bankrupt it was. And I use that term designedly, bankrupt, because the system doesn't work economically as well as maybe others, plural, but at least one, and that's the capitalist democratic system. Now, I don't believe that capitalism is ultimate end-all and be-all, nor do I believe it's something that's like Marx originally would have thought, that it's a phase that people have to pass through. People make their decisions. Right now, we're making a decision to go back to the Dark Ages. We're going back to, in the case of Donald Trump and Pierre, what is it, Petit Pois, little peas, or stuff like that. Poilievre, is that his name? And Boris Johnson for a while in the United States, or in Great Britain. Is that what they call it? United Kingdom, that's what they call it. We're kind of like retrenching and going back to stages that people should be progressing beyond. But capitalism works better than anything else that's ever been legitimately tried out there. That people will say, "Oh, the social democracy in Europe." Yeah, what would Sweden or Germany or France be like without their capitalists? They'd be sharing their poverty. What they do is they tax the capitalists, and the capitalists put up with it. But capitalists actually create value. I hate to have to say it, but they actually do. There are ways actually probably of being more creative, because usually the capitalists that create the value tend to be bought out or be expropriated by mouthpieces. So Steve Jobs was a mouthpiece for, what was the name of the guy who worked at? Wozniacki or something like that? Or was that the guy that worked with Bill Gates? Bill Gates actually did a little bit of computer work on his own. But, you look at some of the first, I'm talking about manufacturing capitalists, money managing capitalists, like financiers and bankers. I have little use for, but they've been around forever. They almost had like a joint stock company in Assyria, ancient Assyria. And this is like in the old Assyrian kingdom. The new Assyrian kingdom, when would they say it started? Maybe 923 BC. I tend to think it was 911 BC, but I think it was Ashur-dan even before. Who was the guy? It was Adad-nirari II, who was started in 911 BC. But this would be now they misdate the old Assyrian kingdom under Shamsi Adad. Did they say Adad? Adad? I would say Adad. Hey, Dad. Anyway, they would borrow money from people of means. This is in the kind of the northern part of present-day Iraq. And then they'd they'd get a caravan together, a caravan of donkeys actually, what it looks like. And they'd go all the way into close to the middle of Turkey. That's a long ways to go. See how that works out? But they'd, they were taking, I gather, more than anything else, fabrics that were manufactured in Mesopotamia and northern Iraq, Assyria. And they would trade for raw materials. It looks like they were trading for lead, maybe. not so much tin. They would get tin from Cyprus. No, they'd get copper from Cyprus. Anyway, tin I think came from further afield later. I think it came from Cornwall, actually, outside the Gates of Hercules, outside the Strait of Gibraltar. Anyway, Confucianism, people are going around, wow, look at the Tang Dynasty, amazing cultural achievement. They're well ahead of the West. The Chinese were under the time. Yeah, that's 600 to 900 AD, and it looks like the dominant religion amongst the cutting edge of the society, the upper classes of society, or the movers and shakers, was Buddhism, and that was between 600 to 800 AD. And the Tang Dynasty kind of limped along for 100 years after that, till roughly 900 AD. What happened? The empire struck back. The empire in the form of Confucianism. You can't have Confucianism where order is maintained at the expense of everyone kowtowing to his or her superior. All the way down the line from children and peasants, all the way up to the emperor. It's a recipe for slow motion disaster. And that's what happened to China. It was a long process of being close to maybe the most dominant, around 600 to 900, most dominant culture in the world, most advanced, and where they were actually expanding their borders. And then, when it went down 900 AD, then China started falling apart. People started invading it. People have this idea that stuff progresses, but you can have barbarians at the gates. That's why the Chinese, even before then, put up the Great Wall of China in bits and pieces and hither and thither and yon. There were barbarians at the gates of the Great Wall of China, and they kept on coming in, and they were literally barbarians. There are such a thing as barbarians. There are people who don't believe in civilization. They believe in squatting on civilization, and they tend to be nomads. Not all nomads are nasty. I'm talking about pastoral nomads, and maybe even some of them aren't that nasty. People will say about them, they're peaceful because, there's so much room. They can, when they have a little bit of an argument, they can go somewhere else. You try finding somewhere else, or back when in Saudi Arabia, you have to have water. You have to head towards oases. What happens if the climate, if the weather in any particular year doesn't cooperate? You end up having to herd your cattle or your camels or whatever somewhere else. Guess who wants to go somewhere else? Sometimes it involves, and this is still going on in places neighboring on Somalia. They are the nomads from Somalia when they're running into what's called global warming, and I think global warming is having its effect. But understand, pastoral nomads, if they're herding sheep and particularly goats, they're stripping vegetation. There's been a steady process of desertification in places where Muslims have taken over, because they've tended in core areas, like in the Middle East,